Hi, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to be creating, or in this case, we're actually going to be fleshing out the first two functions over here. So what we're going to be doing is first writing our introduction, and then we're going to be moving on and doing our instructions. So this is the first time we're actually writing inside a function, so I'm going to take it a little bit slow for the beginning, and then after that, I'm going to go through and start speeding up with our print instructions here. So pretty much what we want to do in our introduction function is give the user something to start off with. So for example, welcome to the calculator, or maybe we print the name of our calculator or something like that. Now it's going to be printed in our command line here. So we want to make it a little bit interesting, something that actually looks a little bit decent. But before we do that, the main way that we can do this is through a print function. So it is a function just like the ones we're writing here, except it's already been written by the people who made Python. So this interacts directly with our terminal, and what the print statement actually does is goes through and outputs whatever we pass into here into whatever we have in our terminal. So let's start with a little example. I'm just going to say print hello. Now, this is a very basic thing to do. What I'm going to go through is now in my main function, which is the only one that's being ran, is we're going to type in introduction. Now, what this is going to do is call our introduction function. And it's pretty much just going to say to the program, let's go and get this introduction function and run it. And then what's going to happen is we're calling this main function. So it's going to tell the program to run the main function, and then the main function is going to run the introduction function. I know a lot of functions there, but pretty much what's going to happen is everything inside main is going to be run, and therefore everything inside everything in the other functions are also going to be run. Now, it might sound a little bit complicated, but once I start running it, you're going to see it for yourself. Let's go ahead and type that, and you can see that hello is outputted to our line here. So one thing I overlooked before I started this is these quotation marks. Now, we're talking about a string in this case. A string is, just think of it as a word or a series of characters. So we can't do math with this or anything, which is why we need to parse it later on. But for now, we're going to work with strings. Now you can use either double quotes or single quotes. For Python, it doesn't actually matter, at least until you start making substrings and things like that. But for now, we're just going to go with our double and single quotes. So we're going to go ahead in here and print out our calculator. So I'm going to say Python calculator. Now, we're not actually going to do any really cool formatting or anything special. We're just going to leave it like this and leave all of the formatting for the video later in this series. Now, all we have to do for our introduction is print this out. Now that we have our introduction function set up, let's go ahead and talk about our print instructions function. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that from our function here, and I'm actually going to go through and start working with just these, and we're going to leave the main for the end. So let's go ahead and print the instructions. Now, one thing I didn't talk about yet is a variable. Now think of a variable as a cardboard box, and you can throw something inside it and store it. So for example, if I wanted to store a word, I could basically take this and give it a name, and then whenever I want, I could take this name and use it to get whatever's inside our box. So all you have to do this is type out the name that you want. Now you don't put quotation marks around this because it's a variable name. You're going to access this straight through the program. So what I'm going to do is type out my name. Now, for example, in this case, it's going to be our instructions. So I'm going to say instructions is equal to, and then in here, we're going to type out whatever we want. So we're going to type out our instructions into here. Now, of course, we're going to make it a word, so we're going to use those quotation marks again, and now we're going to start typing out our instructions. So let's go ahead and start this up. First thing I want to say is a little bit of how to run the program. So in this case, I'm just going to go and say type your command in this format, like that. And I'm going to put a space there, and the reason is we're actually going to add something on, and I'll show you what this is going to do in just a second. So now we set this type your command in this box right here, or type your command like that, or whatever. We're taking this string and setting it or giving it a name. So instead of having to just type this out every time, we can just type instructions and get the same thing. But one thing you can do is actually modify these things later on. So one thing we're going to talk about now is string concatenation. Now this is a little bit of a difficult concept to understand, so just pay attention. Pretty much what we're going to do is take two strings. So in this case, it's going to be type your command in this format and the actual format, and we're going to glue them together using a plus symbol. So I'm going to say instructions, or for now, I'm just going to go with new instructions. So remember, we're creating a new variable is equal to instructions plus, and then in here, we're going to put out our command. So we're going to say, for example, add 1, 2, or 1, 2. Let's just say that. So pretty much what's going on, well, we can do pretty much whatever we want here, but this is just a basic example. So here we go. What's going to happen is, or let me just remove that space, is we have our instructions and we're going to get whatever value is in there. So it's going to be this, and we're just going to glue it on. So it's going to read out, type your command in this format, space, add 1, 2. There's no spaces added in between, so you need to add those yourself. So that's kind of how it's going to work. Now, pretty much what we're doing is storing this in a new box. But why do we need to do that when we can actually just modify it? So we're going to go instructions is equal to instructions plus this. So what's happening is we're actually changing what's inside our instructions variable. So there's actually a much easier way to write this without having to type instructions twice. All you have to do is type plus equals, and this means exactly the same thing. So now we're going to go ahead and start doing this for the rest of our instructions here. So what I'm going to do is keep adding things on. So I'm going to say instructions plus equals, and I'm going to put a space here, and I'm going to say possible operations. Now we're going to say for now the four main ones. So add, subtract, multiply, and divide, just like that. So pretty much what we're doing is adding or concatenating this string, because we're adding multiple substrings or pieces of a string and then throwing it together to create one long sentence. Now we're going to do formatting to make this look nice later, but for now, this is all we need. So the last thing we want to do before we move on is print the instructions, because we haven't actually printed it yet. We're just storing this in a variable. Now, the reason I wanted to use print statements, variables, is instead of typing that whole thing out, you can just go ahead and type print instructions. And from there, it's going to take whatever we've modified and changed over the video and print it out. So let's go ahead and just test this out. I'm going to use Control/ in Sublime Text to comment this out, and I'm going to run print instructions. So when I comment something out, it pretty much just stops it from running. So you can pretty much type anything here and it won't recognize or it won't register. Let's go ahead and run it. So now it prints this whole thing out. Type your command in this format, add 1, 2, possible operations, and whatever. Now later on we're going to put in new lines and make this look all fancy, but for now this is all we need to do. So there we go. We've created and messed around with these first two functions, and over time we're going to be doing the rest of them. It is going to get a little bit complicated. This is kind of basic for now, so once we start getting into operations and classes and all sorts of stuff like that, it's going to get a little bit harder, but for now, this is all we need to know, and now you can go off and print your own statements, create your own strings, and you also know what variables are. Alright, let's move on.